Okay, we are officially starting. My name is Danielle Dresser. I am the editorial manager for freshfiction.com, and I'm here with Love Sweet Arrow, and we are having a very fun little chat we're calling Romance the Past, and we are joined by Kate Bateman, Colette Dixon, and Jess Michaels. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is going to be fun. So I'm going to do a couple of little housekeeping reminders for everyone who's watching right now. Just remember, the reason I'm looking over to the side is because there is a chat box during the chat. So you can definitely put your, I'm trying to get my screen to the right spot. There we go. Okay, there is a chat box where you can join in, you can talk amongst yourselves, but you can also post questions for our authors. There will be time at the end and I will ask them. Marissa, lovely proprietress of Love Sweet Arrow, will be texting them to me, but I'll also be moderating the chat as well. So to get started, I would love for everyone to introduce themselves, tell us about a little bit about your latest book, and what is your favorite time period in history to write about. So we're going to go alphabetical by last name. So Kate, you are first.
Ooh, first up. Okay, well, hello everybody. I am Kate Bateman. Obviously, I write historical romance. My latest book, or my last book out, is in my Bow Street Bachelor series. So, ta-da! It is To Catch an Earl. And this is number 2 out of 3. So the next one is on pre-order. It's out December 29th, I think. But this one's out right now. And it is about the Bow Street Bachelors are 3 heroes who all came back from the war and work for Bow Street, which is like the fledgling police force in England in the Regency. And they all meet their match with badasses and bodices, because that's what I like to write, is heroines who have cool skills and great jobs and kick ass. So they're badasses and bodices. So that's about it. That's about me.
What's your favorite time period to write about?
I do love the Regency, just because I'm clearly English, and so I kind of understand that world. I've lived in a lot of places that have kind of got a Regency, and my background is I used to be an antiques appraiser and run an auction house in the UK, so I've seen literally lots and lots, and you can see I've got lots of things from the Regency, so I kind of understand that period, and I'm drawn to it. But I mean, there's so many other periods out there. I've written other things. I've written Renaissance and Napoleonic and Egypt and things like that. So I think it's a shame to just pigeonhole just a little bit, but I know everyone loves Regency, so that's what I write right now.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Colette, you are up next.
Hi, everyone. So I've written a series of actually contemporary romances, the Love at Lincoln Field Hospital series. So this is my first historical romance. There it is, The Heart of Dr. Steele. I guess what I like to write about is the theme of love as healing, and in my contemporary series, there's a little bit of medical drama that actually revolves around the lives of people who work at a Chicago hospital. So sometimes there's medical drama, sometimes it's, related to their jobs. And I recently was reading, well, not so recently, before I wrote the book, I was reading about the history of women's medicine in America. And in the 1840s, there was a lot happening. Sort of the field of gynecology was sort of taking shape, and doctors were doing really sort of daring things for an era where there was a lot of, propriety and did I say that word right? Impropriety? Yeah. Propriety. Just a lot of inhibitions, around women. And so I had this idea for this doctor who's sort of misunderstood and vilified for actually trying to do the right thing and treating women as, women. So The Heart of Dr. Steele was born. And the more I researched this era, it's set in Massachusetts, 1840s, the more I really was fascinated by it, because it's also Ralph Waldo Emerson was, contemporary of that time. So you have this sort of transcendental thought, you have like the Unitarian church, the like philosophies were emerging, and then yet you have like Nathaniel Hawthorne and the Scarlet Letter, you know, like at the same time. So it's like this real, like just this hodgepodge of different sort of philosophies and sensibilities, and I'm fascinated by the history of medicine. So it was also this like big change into more scientific thinking with medicine. And I realized that I'm just babbling on and on. But I think I answered all the, all the questions.
Yeah, and before I let you go, you have a pre-order contest thingamajig going on with Love Sweet Arrow. You wanted to mention.
Yes. So The Heart of Dr. Steele is coming out this Tuesday, actually, October 6th. So if you pre-order the book through Love Sweet Arrow, I have this fancy wooden carved book box with a pendant. I'm sorry, I didn't bring it. I would show you a bronzed pendant that says "Between the pages of a book is a lovely place to be," and a little vial of bergamot essential oil, which is the sort of fragrance of the heroine in The Heart of Dr. Steele. So
yes, and I think, yeah, and Marissa in the chat, everyone, Marissa did put links to everyone's latest books, but also to The Heart of Dr. Steele. So that sounds like a super fun giveaway. And Jess, now it's your turn.
I am Jess Michaels. I am a 10-time USA Today bestselling author of obviously historical romance, or I would not belong in this square. I write all Regency. My latest is The Matter of a Marquess, which you can order from Love Sweet Arrow. It was the third in my Duke's Five Lows series. The next one comes out in just a couple weeks. It's a reunited lovers. There's a giant dog in it. It's extremely sexy, not related to the dog in any way, but I write the sexy, that's what I do. So, and the time period that I write exclusively in is Regency era.
Awesome. And so do you prefer the Regency, or what's your favorite historical time period to write in?
So the book that comes out in 2 weeks will be my 89th published book.
Wow,
and everything but about 10 of those are historical, and it's all in the Regency. So it's just the place where I'm the most comfortable. I don't really have any desire to write anything different.
Yeah.
I'm happy in my little spot, and my readers know what to expect and what my Regency kind of world looks like. And so that's sort of the place where I like to live.
No, that's amazing. Okay, so before we jump into the main discussion, I want to remind everyone to definitely don't forget to check out lovesweetarrow.com. You can order these authors' books there. You can order pretty much any other book you want. If they don't have it in stock, they will get it for you. And as well, check out their merch. I don't think I've ever pointed this out specifically, and I wish I had it with me. Love Sweet Arrow has their own candle that the company Novelly Yours made, and it smells amazing. Next time I will bring it because I have it, and it's downstairs. So yeah, everyone just head to the website and you can find out about more events and everything like that. Okay, so my first question is a pretty broad one, but I think this will get things going nicely. But before we started, I was telling you all how much I love historical romance. And I think, we see the ebb and flow of different genres, subgenres within romance kind of being in the foreground, being the one that everyone's looking for. But I feel like historical romance is always there. It never quite goes away. It never is too far out of favor. And so I was wondering, what do you think appeals to readers and authors to keep coming back to historical romance? So we'll go in the same order. Kate, you start us off.
Oh, I think it's the escape. I mean, if you contemporaries date very quickly. So, like now are people, I would hate to be a contemporary author and just worrying, should I be putting in the COVID virus right now? Or even anything political or the jokes or anything. Whereas the past is a sort of known entity in that, we know what happens, we know who's going to end up dead, or, things like that. But at the same time, we don't know enough about it that we can't get away with a few liberties. So I like the fact that we can add this kind of slightly more modern twist to it, and we can put our own reading, because nothing exists in a vacuum, right? So I can make my characters a little bit more feisty, or think, what would a slightly more modern girl do, but within the constraints of of that time period. And I think people really appreciate that. I mean, when you read a book, you are always putting yourself into the situation of what would I do in that character's situation. And I'd read a lot of the classics. I studied literature at uni, and I got so fed up with the women dying or just being of consumption or boredom or being punished, and Madame Bovary and Anna Karenina, and I just wanted a happy ever after. And I think that's what all romance gives, is that guarantee, which is why people want it. But especially in times of trouble, like there's always something stressing you out and you can just escape to it. So I think that's it. It's the fact that you can go somewhere and just lose yourself for a day or a few hours and come back safely and deal with the present.
Exactly. Thank you. That was a perfect way to start this off. Okay, Colette, how about you? Oh, Colette, yeah.
Who's next? Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually love reading historical romance. I mean, that's kind of my favorite to read. So I eventually was like, why don't I just try to write one? Because it is an escape. And I mean, I actually love reading Regency, and I think that, I think that it's interesting because like the rules of the era are so specific, and it's just like fascinating to be like a woman who has, modern woman who has all these freedoms, and to like imagine, gosh, like how women, how could they be amazing within their constraints back then, and find love and recognition. And so I mean, for me, that's part of it. Like I love the stories that have that like kind of feminist element to it. And then the escape of just the beautiful ball gowns and the dashing men in their cravats and
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Jess, your turn.
I think the thing that appeals to me as a writer for Regency specifically is the stakes. So, if two people are caught alone in a room together in modern times, like no one cares. Like literally no one cares if you're in a room with the door shut with someone.
Yeah.
In a Regency, you have issues, and now you have a whole lot of stakes that are involved in that. And so I really enjoy exploring those stakes. And also creating characters, especially women characters who flout those kind of problems or issues that come up with those stakes. I tend to write fairly gutsy women who are going to do the thing that they're going to do, sometimes using society and sometimes going against society to do it. And so having those stakes that are just automatically set up in any time period that's not really our modern time period, allows the drama aspect, I think, to kind of ratchet up. And also it always makes it fun to be like, okay, here's a rule and I'm going to now break the rule. So how am I going to explain breaking the rule, and what are the consequences going to be? That's the challenge as a writer for me.
Yeah, love that. That kind of segues into my next question, because my next question is, how does historical romance reflect our current time period? Because I do think fiction especially, but especially genre fiction, is really kind of dissecting something else that's going on that, readers eventually in some way, shape, or form relate to. So I was wondering what you all each think of how historical romance reflects that. So we'll start with Kate again.
Oh, I'm going first. I don't have an original thought. This is hard. Okay, how does it reflect? Well, obviously we read it through a lens, right? So I mean, everything that's happening today and our current stresses and our political beliefs and our things, we're kind of reading it through that lens of of history, really. So it's hard to know. I mean, I read books now that I read 10 years ago, and they are unacceptable, and yet I still love them. And you could not write those books today, because the classic bodice ripping kind of, and I'm talking Joanna Lindsay and I'm, Kathleen Woodvis and things like that. You just couldn't, but I still thoroughly enjoy them for their time period. And I'm sure that our books will date similarly in 20 years. We might look back and just cringe at what we're doing right now, but at least it's progressive. And so we are changing from, I think romance has moved on, certainly even since I've been writing in the last 10 years. I mean, my first book had elements that now, consent-wise definitely are questionable, and some of my favorites like Laura Kinsale definitely have issues that I look at it and it's not a perfect book, but I still enjoy it. So I guess that's it. We're all kind of moving forward, and I hope we're dragging. I think romance is one of the most progressive genres, really. It's where not just women, it's for anyone. I mean, it's for LGBTQ, it's for anyone gets the happy ending, which classic, that doesn't happen in horror, and it's not a guarantee in almost any other genre except ours, which is why I love it. So it can be both modern and historic, and I think that's the joy of putting it together. Like Jess says, you put the constraints, but you're seeing it through a modern lens. So I find that really interesting to play with. I mean, I'm sure Colette and Jess do as well. It's fascinating to kind of smush your poor old characters in there and see what they do,
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, Colette, since you have written contemporary or more modern books, and now you're writing historical, yeah, how do you feel about historical romance reflecting our current time period?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Kate said, I think it's how historical romance written now reflects our time period is the authors that are writing it and the time that's affecting us as we write.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of informs what our heroines do. And yeah, I think it's a way for us to sort of almost, I don't know, maybe in a way sort of reimagine the past, or have heroines who butt up against the constraints and really overcome with a sort of modern sensibility in that way, and affect their heroes to kind of awaken to that. So, I mean, there are plenty of historical romances where the women are not terribly, they don't have a ton of agency, or aren't very liberated, but but ultimately you get that, at least like a gesture and a turning of the hero and the happy ever after, which which is also in contemporary romance.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's about the two people coming together, and the sort of the justice of the love of the woman being seen for who she is, and and vice versa with the hero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who once said this, but like action movies, that have the superhero movies that end with justice. I mean, it's not that different than romance, right? Whether it's like past or present, it's justice. Love is justice. So
yeah, great. All right, Jess.
I have two answers. So my first one is that emotions are emotions, and that just because the challenges would be different maybe in 1812 and in 2020, like the love is the same, I mean, that's really something that doesn't change, I mean, especially the way that we tend to write it in romance, where two main characters are really in love with each other by the end of the book. It's, even if you start out with an arranged marriage trope, you still, I mean, they end up really liking each other. So, I mean, that journey is the same, because it's a human journey.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that I'm realizing that the longer that I do this and the older that I get, that I tend to work out my own issues in my books. So the book that's coming out in a couple of weeks, for various reasons, the two of them are trapped in a house. They can't leave the house because she's in danger if she leaves the house. And he ends up smuggling her out so that she can go to a museum, because she's going stir crazy. And of course, he's desperately in love with her by this time. And she's just going on and on about how nice it is to be out of the house, and like just how much she really missed other people. And as I'm writing it, I'm thinking, oh, this is my quarantine book. Oh, I feel you. Imogen is me. So, I mean, I think sometimes I tend to, we were just laughing about it on Twitter. So it's a couple of friends and me, it was just like, so that's how I'm working this stuff out. But again, I mean, like, that same feeling is true. I mean, those are universal feelings. They don't matter about time or space or who someone is or who someone loves. I mean, the way that we feel those emotions, they're the same no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. I'm gonna have to check that out, because Totally relate right now.
I want to read a quarantine book where she gets to go to a museum with humans.
Exactly.
That's it.
Okay. My next question, and we're going to do one more time in this order, and then we'll switch it up. But what are some of your favorite romance tropes to put in a historical setting? So we'll go with Kate again.
The ones I gravitate to both reading and writing seem to be enemies to lovers. I just love that because that's such a huge arc.
Yeah.
And I am drawn to those snarky couples that just, I love to hate you, and that all my favorite films that didn't quite give it to me, like Han and Leia, I didn't get enough of that, or I didn't get enough of Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood, and I wanted that snark. So that's what I love to read. I love to write. And it doesn't matter whether that's historical or not. I mean, I would read any contemporary that has that, you know, horrible boss and, you know, gorgeous girl hating each other from the moment. That would be great.
Yeah.
But I also like the forbidden, like the constraints again. So it's that best friend sister, or even friends to lovers, or marriage of convenience. And every time I say I hate a trope, I will then read an author and they will totally change my mind. So Laura Kinsale is one of my all-time favorites, and she writes everything I say I hate. I say I hate, you know, I hate, you know, second chance romance. She makes me love it. I hate it when they have a love child that turns up halfway through. She makes me love it. So I can't say never, but my personal favorite would be enemies to lovers, because I just love the start. I love that instant tension between them. That's great.
That's a good one. I love it too. Okay, Colette.
Well, I think I will like Jess's next book because I love the forced proximity. I just love forced proximity. So actually in my book, The Heart of Dr. Steele, they're neighbors. And so there's a little bit of that in there. And he's very grouchy at first, not a little element of enemies to lovers, but I do like the snark and the banter. I love reading it. I don't know that I totally like the master of it or anything, but but I do love reading it. But yeah, forced proximity. Give me like snowed in at the inn, or you know or one bed at the inn, or yeah, love that kind of stuff. I just love to see how the authors pull it off too. It's so fascinating. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that there's anything that another one that I really like also is kind of like best friends to lovers. Like I think that's a very sweet, can be a very sweet, slow arc too. And yeah. And I think the rich, if it's done well with the rich backstory, is just awesome.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jess, your turn.
Well, I've written almost everything because I've been doing this for a really long time. But I've scarred a lot of heroes and thrown them up in a castle and Beauty and the Beast and love that. I'm a huge enemies to lovers fan. I'm a huge friends to lovers fan. I like forced proximity. I like to add a little mystery element to books. Really, aside from Secret Baby, because babies just really aren't my jam. I'm not to read or to write. Like I don't want a baby in there. I've barely put an animal in a book. I don't want a baby. It's too much. So, but aside from the Secret Baby trope, I think I've written pretty much everything, and I've enjoyed pretty much everything as a reader. So I don't really have a favorite, but I have all of the favorites.
Yeah, right.
Give us all the tropes.
I want all the tropes.
Push
them in there.
Don't discriminate.
As much as possible. Yeah, exactly.
Shoehorn them in.
Yeah. So this is just a reminder to everyone watching. If you have questions for our authors, be sure to put them in the chat because we will have time at the end to ask them. Okay, so we're going to move on to some more questions, and I'm going to change up the order, so get ready. So this question is, how do you balance your own modern views versus what may have been expected in the past? And we kind of touched on this, but let's dive in a little bit deeper. So Colette, I'm going to have you start this time.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's interesting to just think about the heroines of the era that you're reading or writing, and I mean, I like heroines with, you know, agency who are doing, you know, bold things. So yeah, how do I reconcile it with my modern beliefs? Was that sort of the question?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, there's sort of that suspension of disbelief and just like putting yourself in this other era. It's its own universe, you know. But then, you know, in writing, also just trying to have a little bit of that sensibility of empowerment. Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I find it really funny that I like historical romance because I absolutely hate like getting dressed up, and I was like the biggest tomboy, and like I actually once quit a job because they required you had to wear pantyhose. I was like, no, I'm not wearing pantyhose for anybody. So, but but I think just like, yeah, just the but it is fascinating. Like, God, women had to wear these whalebone corsets, and you know, I think it's also just like a reminder of like, oh, all the freedoms that we do have now, and yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Jess.
So I don't know that I actually do balance it. My readers are modern people. I'm a modern person, and I want to write characters that reflect the values that I have, and those are modern values. Like my characters care about consent. They care about their love interest's pleasure and their love interest's life. They see each other as equal partners. Especially the heterosexual relationships that I've written. My heterosexual male characters see my heroines as smart and capable and just as good as they are. And, you know, the other thing I think is that history is very clouded by who gets to tell it. And so the history of LGBTQ people, of people of color in history, is sometimes erased. And then we say, well, that's too modern, but it's not, because it's just that we're not telling those stories because someone said that they didn't exist. And so, you know, that isn't true. And I don't want to create worlds where I just pretend like that's not true. So if that means that there's certain readers who won't respond to my books, then that's fine. I mean, I don't have to be for everyone, but the stories that I want to tell are the stories that, you know, reflect the values that I have. So I think I don't, you know, if that makes me a wallpaper historical writer, then welcome to wallpaper land. we enjoy equality and having sex in the library. So, and there's lots of people that want to read that. So, and there's also, if you want a historical discourse on, you know, the War of 1812, there's somebody that's very happy to write that, and you can go and read their book. But I mean, if you want something that reflects those values that are important to you, that's what I'd rather write. That I think I have to feel good about what I'm writing.
Definitely, I agree 100%. All right, Kate.
Oh man, Jess said it so well. Like just what Jess said. You're right. It's such a fine balance, and you know, as somebody who has studied a lot of history, I find it really difficult, and there is a lot of criticism towards historical authors about how accurate we are, but it is historical fantasy that we're writing. We are not writing a contemporary account, and we're not, like Jess said, we're not writing, we couldn't possibly know for first how people spoke. Really, written text is different to spoken text, and people don't write down the full truth of what they're in their diary anyway, you know. And we are, if anyone thinks they weren't having sex in the library in Victorian times, that's so not true anyway. And every time I get some criticism about, you can't say that, it's too modern, you can't use that word, you can't use this or that, it was so not true. You'll look back and find 50 examples of actually, you know. And do you want to get into that argument with somebody about, can I use the F word in the 1400s? Yes, I can. I've got an abbot being sworn at in the pages of an ecclesiastical text which has it, but I'm not going to go that far. So it has to be accessible to a modern reader, so it has to be enjoyable. The medieval I wrote, I could have written fully in Italian, you know, 1340s text. No one would read it. I might read it, no one else would care. And so it's got to be right. You've got to have this balance of enjoyment as well as historical facts. So I think we all do a bit of history by stealth. We like to to flavor it with some accurate facts. But at the same time, I think there is that suspension of disbelief, like Colette says, that people don't expect it to be exactly right, and they want to read something a little bit more interesting and progressive. And I get away with it by saying these are the stories that people just didn't write. Most history is written by, you know, men in power of whatever color, and a lot of the text, you know, we'd all be burnt as witches, you know, 800 years ago or whatever. So I like to think that we are digging out the texts and showing the stories of people that didn't have a voice before, and that's true of women, of, as you say, queer people, of people of color, of, you know, every other history, you know, part of the world. You know, that's our job, is to make it enjoyable, but to shine a light on some of those unusual stories. So that's my soapbox, and I will die on it.
I also think, just to add one more thing, that the people that complain about the historical accuracy of certain things, they're very willing to overlook my 10-book series about Duke heroes that are all have abs and perfect teeth and bathe regularly. Like that, they're okay with putting aside some, you know, historical accuracy.
Yes.
But they don't want to hear about a gay character. They can't believe that a gay man can have a happy ending. So, you know, I mean, it's also who is presenting, you know, who's presenting the argument that this isn't historically accurate, or this is too modern. It's like, well, you know, it's interesting what you choose to give a pass to and what you don't. So
Right.
That's a classic case. There's such a brilliant case of there's a guy called the Chevalier d'Eon, who was a cross-dressing spy in the French Napoleon. It's absolutely fantastic, and he just dressed as a woman and no one cared. It was just like, he likes wearing women's clothes and he's a cool spy, and he came to England and he wowed everyone here. So I mean, I think people's perception of the past is often quite wrong. Think how completely open it was. I mean, the Roman times, I mean, people were crazy back then, and then we got Victorians kind of repressed everybody, and before that it was a bit less, you know, Regency was a bit less. The Georgians were ridiculous. I mean, everyone was sleeping with everybody else, and your wife and your mistress and your 17 maids, and nobody cared. So I think the people who criticize it only know a very small part of history and don't take into account the absolute crazy breadth of human experience that's out there. So yeah, you're right.
I love it. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on. But I have a feeling the answers to these questions will probably be somewhat singular. But is there a time period you want to write about that you haven't yet, or even another genre or subgenre? So let's start with Colette again.
Well, I definitely want to write more of the 1840s America now that I've been hooked into this interesting time period. But if I were to write about other times, I actually think medieval is really fascinating. I'm kind of fascinated by time periods where the I like sort of the history of ideas and like how people thought about the world and the scientific thought or lack of scientific thought at different times, and how that informed people's lives. And one thing that's kind of interesting about like the mid 1800s, as I was reading some medical history, is that there was like kind of the like mid 1800s, 1850s was kind of this like shift in how people thought about pain, like their like pain meds, like, and anesthesia really came to be after that time. And so like people were much more fatalistic about it. And like in any given household, you know, several household members were just having pain, like toothaches or, you know, knee pain, and just like people just kind of dealt with stuff. And then once pain medicine came to be, it was like, oh, well, we shouldn't be in pain. Why are we in pain? You know, but like the experience that people have based on their beliefs is just fascinating to me. So like, I think the medieval period is really interesting because people, there's a lot of sort of magical thinking. And anyway, yeah, so maybe someday I'll do medieval, but
definitely.
I do have a whole second book in my head set in the Dr. Steele world, so we'll see.
That's something to look forward to. Okay, Jess.
Like I said earlier, I really like being where I am. I mean, if you ask me, can you give me 5 book ideas that are historicals by the end of next week? I could give you 23 of them by the end of like the next 2 hours. And if you ask me to give you a contemporary or God forbid medieval or Victorian, I could maybe give you 1 by next week, because that's just not like, my brain likes this and it wants to do this, and I get to explore every single aspect of everything that I want to write. I figured out a way to do that after this long, so I'm pretty happy here. And I mean, readers have an expectation of what they're going to get from me, and so I'm going to keep giving that to them, and I get to play around in my world, and I'm happy here. So I'll probably be the only one who is like, no, I'll just stay where I am.
I love it. All right, Kate.
Well, Jess, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, you do it so well. So
I try.
I would say I'm drawn to anywhere with conflict built in. So I mean, the Regency has that, obviously, with the rules and regulations, but I've done the Italian Renaissance, which I was drawn to because there were all those warring factions. You have the Borgia and the de Medici, and there's built-in people have got vendetta for years and they hate each other. You can kill people off in the way you can't in the Regency. I mean, people met horrible ends in my Italian Renaissance. But I've explored other ones. So I've done Napoleonic France. So although I technically say it's the Regency, it's kind of a few of my first series, the Secrets and Spies series, in Napoleonic France or in Spain, or I did a very short novella in Napoleonic Egypt, which was really fun, even though I've never been to Egypt, but I went there in my brain, and that was a novella. I suppose, I don't know where I would do maybe I would do a full length in Napoleonic Egypt, because that's really fun time. And there were some crazy adventurers and real life people out there doing Indiana Jonesy kind of stuff. And a lot of them were women. And, technically they went along with their husbands, but actually it was like, oh, Cerebel's only actually discovered this on her own without her husband 100 miles away, So there's some really cool people out there I'd love to explore. So, but again, I quite like Regency. It's a fun place to be. Maybe Georgian. I might go back a bit, because again, they were outrageous, those Georgians.
Right.
So I might, and I did do a good dress and wigs. So
I can't get around the wigs. Like, the wigs are what turned me off. I'm like,
but again, suspension of disbelief. Baths once a week, no feminine hygiene products. I mean, dukes.
You just push that to the side. Push it to the side.
No one cares. All the dukes were hot, and they wore tight trousers.
Abs for days on those dukes.
We're allowed that. They weren't all kind of inbred, gouty horrors with smelly breath.
Terrible political position.
Don't give us that. So yeah, I went a bit off topic there, but maybe Georgian as well.
That was awesome. No, the Georgians were. I mean, even considering how close it is, it's like they were so different than.
It was a big shift, a really big shift.
Yeah. And then even when you think of like the difference between Regency and Victorian, like you see it starting, but it's just like so different. I love it. Okay, so then my last kind of official question, main discussion question is, if you could travel back in time and spend a few days, I didn't want to spend you like for a year or something, just a few days, if you come back, what historical era would you visit and why? So we're going to start with Colette again, and then we'll switch it up for the next section.
So, yeah, that's a hard question. I would have to say, like, just because I fell in love with, romance and probably with Jane Austen, that I would probably go to her Regency era, that would be just totally fascinating. And probably not as fun as all of our books imagine, but, but it would be totally fascinating.
Awesome. Okay, Jess, how about you?
Despite knowing that there will be an odor, for sure, Regency, just to feel it out. Yeah. But I do want to come back within a 3-day period, because I like showers and I like cell phones, internet. I like I like things. So,
Yeah.
but just to visit, I wouldn't mind starting there. Edwardian would also be really fun. I would never want to write it, but I mean, it's such a cool time period as far as like the clothing and, you know, the transition into the 20th century. So.
I agree. All right, Kate.
Oh, I think with the caveat that I would definitely not come back as like a penniless serf, then I would want to go to like somewhere like Catherine the Great's Russia, or something just so completely over the top ridiculous, and like in War and Peace, or Napoleonic, you know, Russia, or something like that, just because it was just such a different world. Or even Versailles, you know, to see, I've been to Versailles and it was so disappointing because it's an empty room and it just felt like there were ghosts, that there was no furniture, there weren't people, and I would love to see it hot and sweaty and smelly with perfume and just with, you know, food on the floor and people hiding in corners and making out. I want the life of it. So I give you the smell and the taste of somewhere like that, some crowded ballroom with amazing dresses and naughty in every corner. That's what I want.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I said, just a few days, we can come back to our like modern times and running water and all of that, and toothpaste.
I mean, even basic stuff like glasses. Like I would, I couldn't wear glasses. I would literally be squinting at everyone over a meter, and so that would be horrible. In real life, we'd all hate it.
Yeah.
That's for a few days I'd cope.
Okay. So now we're going to do kind of a rapid fire fun round. You can explain it as much as you want. You can give me a one-word answer. And they're kind of like a mix of really one-word answer, like would you rather type questions, and we'll go from there. So, but I'm going to tell you the orders we can go through really quickly. So it'll be Jess, Kate, Colette. Okay. So my first question, starting with Jess, would you rather have a night on the town in London or a country house party?
Country house party, 100%.
Awesome. Okay. Kate.
Yeah, country house, definitely.
Ooh, Colette.
Country house. Yeah, all kinds of shenanigans happen there.
Yeah, that's how I feel. So I'll say this. So Fresh Fiction does, every week we do author book club chat things. And one of the things we kind of do these icebreakers at the beginning. And this question was one because we had a historical author on, and almost everyone chose London, but like there were like 2 or 3 of us that chose country house. And I was like, who knows what can happen at a country house party? Like, like it'd be way more interesting than like, you know, something in London where there's a million things happening.
Plus the country house parties always last like 2 weeks, so.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a murder. For sure there's gonna be a murder.
and a hot groomsman and you know,
and abs.
and a lake for Mr. Darcy to swim in.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
Totally. I feel so validated right now. Okay.
Yeah, we definitely see you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is, what time or place in history do you wish you knew more about? So we'll start with Jess.
That's hard. Wish I knew more about.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that Greek Roman time period as far as just learning more about it. I mean, it's such a birth of like kind of modern ideas and a lot of just really sketchy crap going on. So between the two, I mean, I feel like we are sort of reliving it now, but it's, you know, I would like to see the original version.
Awesome. Okay, Kate.
That's really tough. Probably Napoleonic France. I know a bit about it, but it would be pretty cool to know even more about it. So that's just a personal geekiness thing, nothing to do with writing. I just think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, Colette.
Wow, I'm a little bit stumped. God, there's so many different time periods I don't know that much about. I think this isn't super romantic. I mean, it could be romantic, but I think it would be interesting, like kind of the inside of, you know, Eastern Bloc Germany, or, you know, those sort of like closed cultures and repressive governments. Like, I think it would just be fascinating to hear like the more inside stories of how that really was. in those situations.
Yeah, no, I agree. That would be super fascinating. Okay, my next one is, I think this is a good one. Upstairs or downstairs? So, Jess.
I probably belong better in downstairs, but I do like to write in upstairs quite a bit.
Yeah. All right, Kate.
Oh, it's like Downton Abbey, isn't it? All the fun seems to happen downstairs, though. But you're
It's a
right.
conundrum.
Upstairs get the good jewels and the good dresses. So
Yeah. All right, Colette.
Yeah, definitely upstairs. I mean, I would be the wallflower, in the ballroom, but I would definitely love to be there.
Yeah. Okay, my next question is, what's the romance, or who is the author who made you a historical romance fan? So, Jess again.
Lisa Kleypas is probably the first author that I really felt super connected to. And she was nice to my mom, so that helps too. So, I mean, she's always nice to everyone, but yeah, so I always loved like how sexy her books were, and that she had especially male characters who weren't always, titled. And I mean, I've written very sexy and a lot of times male characters who are not titled. So apparently she is a good influence.
Yeah. All right, Kate.
oh God, it's hard to choose just one. I mean, I think I grew up on people like Georgette Heyer, who again is problematic now, but I get at the time she was, for teenage Kate, it was, they clutched a snuff box and that was the sexiest thing I'd ever written or read. And also Julie Garwood and Laura Kinsale. Those two, I remember picking up a Julie Garwood, not just thinking it was historical fiction, and it blew my mind because there were whole books about this genre that was just people lived happily in history,
Right.
So that was pretty cool. Those three maybe.
Awesome. And Colette.
Yeah, some of the old time authors. I'm actually sort of relatively new to romance in the last 10 years. So I would say some of my favorites more, sort of when I was getting into it were actually like Courtney Milan. But I enjoyed some Lisa Kleypas, and more recently I'm like going back and reading the original, the Laura Kinsale and Teresa Medeiros. I like some of her books too.
Super fun. All right, my last one is super silly, but it's almost Halloween, obviously. If you had a costume party to attend, what would you dress up as? You are not limited to a historical era, whatever you want. Let's do this same order one more time. Jess.
So my husband and I are huge fans of Bob's Burgers, and there was a great debate of what minor Bob's Burgers person would you dress up as, but I would absolutely be Tina from Bob's Burgers because I am Tina from Bob's Burgers.
That's awesome. Okay, Kate.
Well, so I've got this year sorted because my daughter wants to be a headless Anne Boleyn. She literally has got this thing where you put a fake head and shoulders and she holds her own head, which is
that's so cool.
So cool. So clearly I've got to be somebody that goes with that. So I don't know if I'm going to be Henry VIII or whatever, but I have to be someone that goes with Anne Boleyn. So I might be another Henry VIII wife. Who survived? I'm going to be Catherine Parr because she lives. How about that? I'm going to be the survivor of all those women.
Awesome. And Colette.
I'm gonna say witch.
Yeah.
That's just my standby Halloween costume. I have this like gorgeous like black velvet floor length cloak.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you're halfway there.
Yeah, I just do it up every year with the the hat and the makeup and so any excuse to wear that cloak.
Yeah, I asked this question at the last panel, and so if anyone was there, they already heard this, but my daughter, she's 6 and she is like deep into Disney princess, like everything. And so, which princess she's going to be changes every day. Like, I'm like, we gotta make a decision. We gotta figure this out. I gotta order this dress, whatever. But then I'm always like, well, what am I gonna be? Because all of them, their moms are either dead or they have like terrible mother figures in their lives. So I was like, do I have to be like the evil stepmother? Like, who am I going to be? I don't know. We'll see. Ugh. So I don't have a good answer. I probably would just be a witch or like a cat. I have a million cat ears. So, okay, so we do have some audience questions and they're pretty good. And I will say the chat has been pretty funny. So you guys should definitely, I'm one of those people, I can't like watch myself or listen to myself, but if you can go back, the chat will show up in the replay. It's very funny. One of you brought libraries, people ran with it. I see all of you. It's very funny.
Oh.
So, but Linda is asking, do you plot or pants? And how do you start with a book? Is it character or setting driven? So I'm gonna let it be a free for all. I'm done calling on all of you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
You cut out for a little bit of that.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, do you plot or do you pants? Plotter or pantster? And then how do you start the book? And is it, I think in relation to starting it, is it character or setting driven?
So I'm somewhere in between. I'm a plantster. So I generally start with character. Character is what's most interesting to me. And when I know a character, then to me that's plot, because whatever situation I set them into, if I know who they are as a person, then I'll know how they're going to react, and that's going to change where they go. So I'm sort of that in between, though. I tend to do a fairly detailed character sheet for my main characters, and then I will sort of write out scenes, and usually just kind of a basic, this is where I need to go. I kind of know where I need to get to. And then I also like to leave elbow room when they tell me something that I didn't know, that they didn't tell me when I was doing their character sheet, because I hadn't seen them move around together yet. I have to have that freedom of them. Oh, they are not going to do it that way. Okay, we'll do it this other way. So that's kind of my answer.
Yeah, I like it. Who wants to go next?
Oh, I'll go next. Okay, so I'm quite similar. I have a wall of crazy. I don't know if anyone else has this, but it's just random. So when I start a book, I've got the characters and who they, I know what they do and what their kind of main thing is, and then I've got a couple of scenes that I know are going to be in that book, like a fun scene, and it might just be fun scene in a library or whatever it is, and then I do this wall of crazy where I move some scenes around and then I have to link them together, and then that turns into a book somehow magically. But that's, yeah, I'm kind of like with Jess, that's where I start, is the people, because they do unusual things. Like you might have an archaeologist and you might have a whatever else, a second son, and you think they're going to do something, and then halfway through they'll just pull something on you, and it's the only way that they could possibly do it, so you kind of got to go away. And then your wall of crazy moves around again, which is why it's on post-its, because everything gets screwed up by the end. But eventually a story hopefully comes out at the end that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, Colette.
Yeah, I'm definitely in between a plotter and pantser. So I usually start out with a character idea of who this person is and what their sort of conflict is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then definitely a lot comes out of that. And then if you can get the complementary character that sort of rubs up against that person in just the right way, then your plot is like there, so, and then you just, then they just sort of take me on a journey of, how they're going to solve their conflicts. So yeah, but they often do it in different ways than I originally imagined, though I usually have like a couple of kind of turning point scenes in my head before I start to write. Yeah, so I like a little bit of the discovery too as I'm going.
Awesome. Okay, our next question is from Reader Seeks Romance, and they are asking, what is the most interesting historical fact that you uncovered while researching your novels? Who wants to say that one?
I have a really interesting one. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe a couple. Well, so I actually went to the Museum of Pharmacy in Lisbon, in Portugal, as sort of a research trip. And they have a French letter there that is like, it's like embossed with this like beautiful painting of these lovers, like, in this intimate pose. It's like, wow, they ornament their French letters. Who knew? You know. But then also when I was researching for the Heart of Dr. Steele, and just like kind of treatments for women in the 1840s. One advertisement I came across was pelvic massage for hysteria. And there's a picture of a woman with a long, you know, gown, and the man kneeling, and his hand is like up inside her gown, and he's relieving her hysteria through his pelvic massage.
Not a bad way to go.
Yeah, maybe what their husbands weren't doing for them. I'm not sure.
Awesome. Okay, who wants to go next?
So I, in my 2015 book, No Gentleman for Georgina, I wanted desperately for them to visit Madame Tussauds in London. She had a touring wax museum, and eventually had a small wax museum that was in London. And so I did a lot of research on Madame Tussaud, and you know, she's a very interesting figure, and what she went through in her life is fascinating. I mean, she was forced to make death masks. People love to talk about she made these she was forced to make them, and they were of friends of her. So, you know, let's just let that one sink in for a minute. Like, here's your dead friend's head, have a fun time, make a death mask. So she was a little scarred for life, but I mean, it was just fascinating just because it's something that exists in our modern world, you know, the Madame Tussauds wax museums. And so to sort of read about the real genesis of that, what a smart, savvy person she was, and you know, all these things that she went through, it was fun, and it was a fun set of scenes to write too in the wax museum. So
yeah. All right, Kate.
Oh, so many. I mean, so many. It's ridiculous. And some of them are so ridiculous that you think you can't actually use them because you just know nobody would believe it. So the first book in my Bow Street series was about, I'd gone down a research rabbit hole. I was looking for something completely different. And I came across this plot to rescue Napoleon by submarine from St. Helena. And first of all, I had no idea there were submarines in 1816. I just thought it was way later for some reason. And then I did research, and it was this completely crazy real life plot. And I just thought it was so ridiculous. And then my awful author brain was like, ooh, submarines are really tiny enclosed spaces, and I bet I can get my characters in there in trouble. So the evil romance writer and the historian in me both collaborated brilliantly on that one. So that was one, Regency submarines. And the other, I mean, this one, the Catch and All, that's based on the real theft of the French crown jewels, which happened, and then they disappeared for 30 years, basically. They went underground because there was a statute of limitations. And if they, uncoincidentally, 2 days after the statute of limitations, which meant that you couldn't be prosecuted for the crime, 2 days after, they turn up in London, like 20 years later, to the day, but 2 years. And my brain got thinking like, oh, well, where were all these amazing gems? They were somewhere for 20 years. Were people hiding them? And it was really cool. And in fact, one ended up being Your Hope Diamond, which is in the Smithsonian right now, which is the Le Droit, which was cut down. So there's all these tiny snippets that you just find are so cool. And we all sneak them in our books, you know, you'll find it. And I mean, a lot gets cut. Some of it, you can have too much research, right? You don't want to ram it down people's throats about, oh, look at this cool stuff. But if you can just put one or two like really cool things in there, I think that helps, that peppers the book. And I think it makes it great because it's true.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we're coming up on 8 o'clock, but we have 2 more audience questions, and they're both really good. So I want to get to them. Fellow romance author Alexis Daria, who I will add, yes, who's watching, but I'm going to add that she has been causing a lot of the shenanigans in the chat.
that checks out.
And she did say because she's on deadline. So
oh, well, that really checks out.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but her question is, do you research as you write, or do you read up on the topic before you start the book? Or does the research kick off the idea for a book?
For me, it's sort of a combination. If I'm like with the Madame Tussauds thing, I knew they wanted to, so I went back, and before I started the book, I had all the research. For the most part, I don't, you know, I mean, I have historical accuracy, but like the world that I've created is the world that we sort of move around in, and it doesn't always take that much research if I'm not doing something specific like that. And so then it'll be something will come up, and now I'm looking up the etymology of a word, or I'm, oh, it's the worst, they kill me every time. I'm like, what do you mean it wasn't until 10 years later? This sucks. And I have to find a different word. It's terrible. Or, you know, like, is there such a thing as a jeweler's loop in 1811? And how, if there isn't, then what would they be using? So a lot of times it ends up being spot research, and I tend to have enough focus and discipline in my strengths that I can just take that information and then just let it go. So that is not something I know a lot of, like, not all romance authors can do that, but I'll do spot research when I'm like on specific things.
Mm-hmm. Who's next?
I'll get, yeah, an idea might be sparked by some kind of research that I've read and think, hey, that's so cool, I've got to stick that in a book, and that'll lead to other ideas, and then, you know, it'll come together. But I also get that thing when you're halfway through and you think, oh, you know, you'll just hit you like, oh, I don't know if I can say that, and then 3 days later you emerge blinking in the daylight and think, I did not need any of that. So the quick answer was yes, of course I can just put that word, and I should have just gone three little stars, research later, 3 little stars, and carried on with it. But no, I did not. I got lost. But I always think any research, it comes back at some point. I'll use it again, even if it's cut out and it goes in this folder that I'll theoretically never use. So it's in there somewhere, so it's percolating. So no research is wasted, I would say.
I would say I do a little bit of both too. Like I did a lot of research on the setting and the era initially. And then as I went along, you know, if I knew a certain scene was coming up, you know, that then I would research for that scene. And then there's the micro details, like, did they, when did the word Davenport come into being? Okay, no, that was 1890s. No, we can't use that. You know, so that sort of comes in the editing and the final drafts. But yeah, it's definitely, you can go down rabbit holes.
I wanted to use the word rube recently, and I couldn't because it's not historically accurate, but I realized there's a word called chaw bacon, and I was so excited that I immediately tweeted at my editor like, chaw bacon though, and she was like, it's a better word. So sometimes it is a good word. I'm using it in every book from now on.
That's great. Okay, and then one more question from Linda. Again, thank you, Linda. Are any of you writing older heroines?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
Great.
I'm getting not as excited about writing 20-year-old ingenues. Not that I won't write them if that's who the character is, but I'm having a lot more fun writing heroines in their early 30s to mid 30s. I've been writing older heroes. The next book, the heroine is in her early 30s. The hero is in his 40. I'm enjoying that they already know who they are. And that's kind of fun. Like no one's like figuring out who they are as an adult. So it's been sort of fun to explore that. I'm not going to do it with every single book probably, but I mean, you know, when it makes sense for a character, I'd rather write someone maybe that fits into an older age group.
My contemporary series is all women in their 30s to 40, all like career women. So I enjoyed writing that, but the Heart of Dr. Steele is sort of first love, so they're a little younger.
Good. Great.
I'd have to say I'm skewing older the more I write, because I started out with like 19 and 20-year-olds, and now we're pushing 27, 30s, you know. So generally it's their first real big love. So it's I haven't written any, you know, mid 30s, mid 40s, second chance, you know, widowers twice round kind of thing. Just because I think a lot more of the historical people in the Regency married very early. I mean, 18, 17, 16. I don't, you're right, I'm not interested in partly formed beings. That's why my girls all have cool skills. They have something like a job, or they have a background in something else that isn't just being young and pretty, because they're not interesting to me. You want flawed people that can argue and can stand up to their other half. So yeah, I guess I'm skewing older.
Good. I mean, I think our our chat is excited about hearing that. So that's really good. Okay, so before we sign off and say goodnight, can we go around one more time and tell us where's the best place for readers to connect with you and to find out about what you have coming up and things like that. So let's start with Kate. We'll go alphabetical again.
Oh, so all the usual. Facebook, I have a Facebook group that's Kate's Badasses and Bodices, so you can join that one. That's quite fun. I'm rubbish at Instagram, but you can find me on Instagram. I'm just getting the hang of that. Love Twitter, I'm on there. But mainly it's Goodreads or BookBub. Those are the two if you want to follow me on there. They're pretty cool for getting updates and things like that, and I'm fairly active on those. So
awesome.
Or my newsletter. I should probably say newsletter. And you get a free develop. It's monthly-ish because I'm not fooling anyone that this is regular. It's whenever I remember to do it and I have something to say, otherwise I can't be bothered. So monthly-ish newsletter. You'll find it. Google Kate, you'll find it.
All right, Colette.
Yeah, ColetteDixon.com/newsletter, I think. Or I think there's maybe a link on my Twitter, C Dixon Books. But I'm really more on Instagram, C Dixon Fiction. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. And Jess?
I am on all of the socials with the same username, which is Jess Michaels BKS. So Jess Michaels Books, but just BKS. You can go to my website, which is authorjessmichaels.com, and join my newsletter. When you do that, you get a free copy of The Other Duke, which is a full-length historical romance. And every single month, I draw a winner from the members of the newsletter, and somebody gets a $75 Amazon gift card or like an e-reader. So that's fun. But I'm at all the places and I'm very active at Twitter. If you would like to see me being calm and authorly, follow me on Facebook. If you would like to see me screaming constantly, then follow me on Twitter.
Awesome. Okay, so before I do end the live stream, I want to remind everyone who's watching to head to lovesweetarrow.com. You can buy all of our amazing authors' books there. You can check out Colette's pre-order contest. You can see all of Love Sweet Arrow's merch and as well as their upcoming events. They've got some really good events coming in October and November. And I'm doing my due diligence and reminding everyone that they will have surprise boxes specifically for the holidays. So be on the watch for that. My name is Danielle Dresser. I'm the editorial manager for freshfiction.com. And yeah, this was so much fun. I loved spending a little bit over an hour with all of you chatting. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right, everyone. We will see you all again soon. And I hope you all have a great evening. Good night.